Okay, so this is video number 5 in Chelik Aleph of Orot HaKodesh. It's called HaKri'at LaSodiyut. So it literally means the call to translate Sodiyut, translated as secrets. So it's kind of like a reference here by Rav Kook to Torat HaSod. Torat HaSod is usually translated again as the Torah of secrets. The Kabbalah, all the things that we call in English, we like to call it culturally mysticism. These are very not helpful terminologies. Things like Kabbalah and mysticism, because in the world today there's just so many associations with these ideas and what these things mean that are very far away from the writings and intent and contents, really, of this whole aspect of Torah. It's fair to say that most of the writings of the Torah that we have, Torah Shebaal Peh, meaning things that are in the oral Torah, are the vast majority of them are what we can call Kabbalistic writings. In other words, things that are about whatever the Kabbalah is about. Unfortunately, those things are not learned very often. For those of you who have learned a lot of Gemara, so I'm sure you've been through Maseches Nedarim, which is a Masechta that if you look at the Rishonim that analyze it and explain it, there's a lot of issues and problems in that Masechta, things that were edited and that got lost and that are fragmented, and it's because people did not learn it very much, as Iran there talks about, because Nadarim was such a serious thing, and so a lot of the leaders of previous generations tried to restrict people's knowledge of how to really work with Nadarim, and so because of that, the lack of knowledge really kind of led to a lot of just loss of information and even understanding what the Masechta is talking about. That similar thing is true with what we call the Kabbalah. A lot of the knowledge in the world of Sod is just lost. People will sometimes talk about terminologies and ideas and partsufim and all these different things, the or and these things that are not literal, malachim. All these things mean very specific, real things that are extremely central to how things work in the place that we currently, this place that we live in. But those things need to be understood exactly as they are, and in a nuanced way, and not in a very haphazard way. You sort of just talk about things in a very random. Do you believe in angels? Do you believe in God? Like, what do you think about Kabbalah? Well, the Zohar was written this time. No, that time. Like, what does Tzimtzum? Oh, it just means constriction. Like, all these very haphazard and almost randomly spoken out ideas that are not set down in exactly where they belong in an organized way just cause a lot of damage and a lot of misunderstanding. And the point here is that it needs to be understood really very clearly, very carefully. So Torah Sod actually refers to the aspects of the Torah that you can only know, as we mentioned in an earlier video a little bit, with your da'as, things that you can only actually think about, not with your bina, with your empirical thinking, with your the kind of thoughts where you can actually hear the thoughts, or grasp the words that you're saying, or imagine pictures. That's more in the empirical side of your thinking. Das means the ability to encounter or experience something in a way that is intangible, and yet it's very real. It's kind of like the difference between me and another person that you'd meet. Like, what's really the difference? Like, in terms of the measurable things, those empirically measurable things, obviously there's different things, but if we could technically create, two people that have exactly the same things, the same bodies, the same chemical makeup, the same thought structures, and the same brain structures, and so you'd say they're the same, but we're still not the same because none of us are interchangeable. That indefinable presence that each of us has, it is what we encounter that, and we are able to sort of relate to that with what we call the das. It's your ability to have experiential knowledge, and that's what makes me not you, and you not me, and you not somebody else. And so things that are sodi, the parts of the Torah that are sodi, are the things that we can't talk about in words. Things that you can talk about with your bina, that you can think about with your bina, you can also talk about verbally. So what you can do is you can express an idea that you can think about in your mind with bina. But something which is das based, you can never explain that. I can tell you about somebody else, but I can never really capture them. You have to meet them. So that's the that's the issue with shidduch resumes. They write a lot of things, but it doesn't capture what the person's actually like. So that's what Torat HaSod is. It's the aspect of the Torah's teachings that that usually use analogies to describe the indescribable. And so the discussions we've been having in the previous videos about Chachmas HaEmes and the Chachmas HaKodesh, HaPo'eles, and all those ideas are all referencing that same sphere, or that same, I shouldn't even use the word sphere, but that same structure of ideas that are experiential truths about reality that you cannot really describe in words, and yet you can describe them and capture them if you use your das and you use analogies that kind of direct people to sort of know how to access the das of one of those things. So here, Hakriyat Sodiut, he says this is the call to Sodiut. This is, again, the similar idea to the previous piece, which is that that was called Emes Hanidbas Mikol, which is that everyone's kind of looking for what's real. We kind of want something which we can sort of rely on and lean on and know this is really true. This exists. This is something which I can say this is the way things are, and now I can kind of leave that and say now I know that I have an anchor there, and I can move on to the next thing and figure out what else is true, and gives you like a foundation. So here it's kind of building on top of that and looking at the same type of thing from a different angle. So let's read a little bit and sort of see how it really is kind of like an expansion or a different angle of the previous parak. So he writes, when an individual person, and also an entire generation, in other words, people who are all living in the same time period, to the particular situation, they get to a particular situation where his pe'ula haruchani, his hofa haruchani, which means his intangible manifestation. So that's kind of like if you're an artist, so you're like when let's say if you make a painting, so that, or if you're a musician, or if you're a writer, or if you're really any person who's being creative, so you can express your inner intangible self in some kind of format in the physical world. That now your ruchani side, which means your real, the part that is intangible, that's like ruach, that is not feelable, is expressed in some feelable form. So that's what art is all about. That's what books are all about. That's what music is about. I can somehow access someone's inner self, their consciousness, their soul, their neshama, all the words we use, through their expression. So when you are drawn to express yourself in that way, when you get to oto matzab, that situation where your hofa'ah ruchani is kru'ah, it's called lepe'ulasa, to be kind of to be active, to be expressed in an active way. As Iev Sharlo, then it's impossible for you, Leos Masbias Timono, to satisfy your thirst for doing that, that is really driving you in a very intense way, B'chol Tochen Mugbal, with any kind of limited content. In other words, you can't fill the need for endlessness, for transcendence, for that. Again, transcendence here means Orot HaKodesh, like that which is outside of what you see, but that's which is kind of beyond. And we always use the analogy in Chazal's writings of up, like it's up above, but it's really not literally above us. It's not like it's in space. We're talking about a direction that is not even in another direction. Directions are all within space and time. We're saying it's beyond space and time, but we can't think so easily about what's outside of space and time, because the concept of outside is fundamentally only a concept which applies to space and time. What's outside of the outside? The terms break down. So when you try to satisfy your search and your thirst for the ruchani side of reality, and you try to satisfy with b'chol tochen mugbal, any kind of content that is mugbal, that is a limited content, in other words, that is not really transcendent, but is really within the system. If that limited content itself does not kind of take you on a path towards greater expanded content, that is kind of more towards real transcendent content, that through that movement you'll kind of experience some level of greater heights or more transcendence. So that is kind of like the root of what it is that your self is really looking for. So if you basically, just to sort of try to put that whole sentence together, it's kind of a long one. So if the content is not going to take you to a place where it's helping you to expand more, then you will basically feel like you are not fulfilling what it is that yourself really needs at its root. See here for 1 second. So, and if the content if the limited content that you're reading or accessing in whatever context is bringing you along the path, even if it's not fully, we can call it the difference between like unfiltered Kabbalah and Chassidut, let's say, if you'll call Chassidut today, another not so helpful term. These are teachings that are that reference ideas that are very, very transcendent in ways that are not really capturing a lot of the different sides of what's really kind of going on. And it has its utility. It's very valuable because I think it helps a lot of people to sort of access teachings that they're not really ready for the full picture yet, so they kind of have like more of like like little fragments of it. So that's useful because it is tochen mugbal, but it is further along the path towards expanded tochen that is going to be more transcendent. So if you do that, that's kind of like the only way you'll have it work out for you with Tochen Mugbal. Ideally, it would be nice if you could just go straight to Tochen She'einena Mugbal, content that is just not limited in any way. But that's something which is, that doesn't always work out. And because of this, this process, so the secrets of the Torah, the underlying mechanics of reality, are constantly being demanded more and more and more from the generations, and the generation that we're in now. And then he talks more about trying to substitute limited content for unlimited content. This is very relevant today because I think that there's a lot of sophisticated ideas in the world, and in fact, those sophisticated ideas are reflective of the ongoing evolution, what we call Aliyah Sadoros, towards the next phase that is really the Olam Haba phase, when we all are living forever in a state that is no longer diseased and where we can actually see things clearly and understand each other clearly. And Olam Haba, if you just as a side point, it just means immortal life like this, just without the warped perceptions that these biological tools kind of create for us. So here is going to, the reason why it's relevant is because in a sophisticated reality like this, there's so much depth and complexity and understanding going on in the world, and yet if you are understanding a lot of things, but they're all within the finite or the tangible side of things, so you can literally inundate yourself with information and with ideas and still feel very unsatisfied in terms of that core need that you have to understand yourself and reality and what is this about and what are we doing and so the answer to those types of questions is not just, well, God created you and you have a mission or something like that. That's a very I would even use a harsher word for that. It's a perverted way of sort of thinking about what exactly it is that we're doing here. To say that we're here on a mission is so far below what it is that we are here, and what we're, not just what we're here to do, but like what we are in terms of how it's usually intended, that it really makes it difficult to even begin to think in a different way about what it is that we're here to, who we are, what we're here to do. So, but that's still a little better than sort of just saying like, well, if I spend a lot of time focusing on complexity of biology or complexity of computer programming, which are both fascinating fields that have a lot of implications and can even be used as token that can move you towards a more transcendent understanding of reality, especially computer programming, by the way. It's an extremely profound system in general, an expression of human creativity that is really in harmony with all the Kabbalistic principles, because it really is just us expressing our endless selves in creative contexts and constructs. That's kind of a side point for now, but the point I'm trying to make is that the reason why this is so relevant is because as we get more and more sophisticated like this, so we also, there's so much information, we also tend to confuse, it's easier to confuse the big picture information, the Orot HaKodesh side of things, and sort of interchange it with instead kind of very complex things that are not transcendent, and then you kind of, your mind gets really stimulated by that, and you don't realize that part of, or maybe you do, but part of you is not being satisfied by that. So it's very easy to sort of fall into that kind of headspace to. And people also do that with Torah, with halacha. You could spend a lot of time learning all the tiny details of halacha, and that's kind of like, again, using the same analogy we used earlier, it's kind of like if you, in your marriage relationship, you have a lot of details of how to wash the dishes for your spouse, so you can make him or her happy because you want to do it in a way that like it really, really is the good way for the relationship and whatever. And like you just follow the instructions, and like there's more and more and more details that you keep writing down to like make sure you really get it exactly right. And you kind of get so lost in those details that you forget that you're in a relationship with someone that you're in love with and that you're trying to really just connect to them. So you're kind of losing the forest for the trees. And that can happen with halacha too. And it does happen with halacha because if you're learning a lot of halacha and a lot of gemara that is halachic gemara, and you don't understand the bigger picture, the halacha will become very dead, which is why if you look in the halacha today, from early times for hundreds of years, people have a very hard time with the process of tefillah because they think tefillah is davening, and they learn a lot of halacha of tefillah, but they don't know what exactly tefillah even is besides davening. We have to explain what tefillah is in a more real way, which is really a much longer discussion than just saying you should just say Shemona Esrei and learn what the words mean. So we cannot fill this need with things that are not going to actually satisfy the need. We have to find out what things do we need to satisfy this need, and then we have to get those things and consume them, and not try to take counterfeit versions of that instead. So here he talks about this issue. Ve'akshanut hagoremet. The stubbornness that causes us to try to find in the side of the tangible, the revealed, all the satisfaction that we need on the intangible side, it just weakens us. It makes us feel like there's nothing that can be done. It's like a resignation where there's nothing you just like, okay, whatever. Like it's just, this is what it is. It is what it is. We can't understand things like that. And there are things that we cannot understand, by the way, according to the Kabbalah viewpoint, is that there are things that you cannot understand with your bina, but there are not things that you cannot understand with your da'as. And we have to try to understand what exactly does it mean to not understand something. But when you hear a statement like, these are things that we can't understand, you have to know exactly what that means. In what sense can we not understand? Even the Rambam writes in a few places in the Yad about how there, and also in the Morton Vuchim, about how there are certain things we can't understand about Bechira Chavshis and things like that. So there are many writers later than him, which are much less known, who talk about exactly what that means, that we cannot understand that. The Pardes Rimonim is a very much more of a known one. But what exactly can we understand? What can we not understand? And in what way does it mean that we cannot understand it? These things require nuance, because otherwise it leads to a situation where we just are kind of like, we can't understand it, so there's nothing we can really do. But that's very vague. You can't just say, well, this just can't be understood. There's more to understand there than is usually taught. So, but we're not going to go into the details of what those parts are right now, but that's what he's saying, is that if you say that at the wrong time, that you can't understand something, it weakens us. It scatters our energy, like all of our drives. So Eres, it kind of transports the stormy yearning that we have to a place where it's just going to find emptiness. So we're looking and we want to see whatever it is. We're trying to figure out what's going on, and then we get to somewhere, okay, this is what it is, that's it, okay, there's nothing here. And like you start to like just become very despairing and very just upset, and you just keep looking, and you know, you can't really keep that part of you down, but you can have a lot of fluctuations because you try this, try that, and you can't really get there. And this is a much more complex description of a usually simplified type of pattern. Sometimes we'll talk about it in a more, you know, simplified way. I've heard a lot of speakers and, you know, motivational speakers and rabbis and leaders and teachers say things about how, well, yeah, like people will try to satisfy their needs for spiritual things with physical things, so whether that's money things, materialism, or physical things like physical body things, and that's not really capturing what that is in such a sophisticated way. Here, we're sort of saying is that there's a lot of complexity in a lot of things that we do. People can also actually, it doesn't have to just be that they're just being very base and materialistic in the sense that it's like, I just want to stuff my face with food or engage in sexual activities that are very unbalanced. It's actually, you can also have a very sophisticated, high-level person who is very there are many of us like this, who are very thoughtful and very deep and very analytical, and we just focus those energies on segments of the Chachma world that are still part of the tangible world, like we said earlier 5 minutes ago, which is that you can be extremely smart, spend all of your time and effort, you know, building computer programs, and have a great time doing that, and yet still be so fixated on the tangible world. And there's a big part of you that is the intangible side that is just highly undeveloped, and that you will not be satisfied with that. And that's why the Torah is not about like a black and white, like there's Torah versus materialism, or that's other simplified structures that other religions, which we don't need to talk about right now, are historically known for that kind of dichotomy. We're not saying that. What we're saying is that it's really about the balance between what is tangible and what is intangible, and knowing how to have the intangible understanding of reality constantly evolving and expanding with the tangible understanding of reality, so these things can kind of be in harmony with each other together. It's like Torah is the escort for all of the things that we do in the tangible reality. So here, if you kind of try to switch them, and you try to get satisfaction in the intangible side of yourself from the tangible side, you will have a lot of problems. Now he's going to talk about the people who are very aware of this in different forms, either because they learned a lot of these things or because they are just very intuitively aware of this problem. So he says, and to this problem, to this situation, those who are very courageous of strength, means people who are really, like, they're driven in these areas to really try to, you know, express and relate to the intangible side. These are the people that Hashem's light, which we translated already in previous videos, that means that Hashem's presence, just like right now, my light is coming out. Light is something that you can't see. You see things in a certain light. So here also, my self, my consciousness, that's the me that you're experiencing through seeing my movements and my words. And these, you know, we look into somebody's eyes, we're not looking at their eyeballs, we're trying to see them, the intangible self. That's the or. That's what we call or in the analogy of the Kabbalah. So here also the or Hashem means that same presence of Hashem. People who are looking for, they're not looking for, you know, just doing some kind of weird externalization of God, or even the word God is kind of like that, is one of those types of things. that it kind of takes away from what it is that we've been talking about here. We're talking about an endless, intangible self of all selves that is underneath all selves and unites all selves, that is manifest through all selves and through all contexts. And people are looking for that. There are people who only want that, and they obviously enjoy all the things that are inside this context, but they see all things in that light, and that's a very profound way to see things. And so those people, they're called to try to kind of keep making dents and to sort of show and express and manifest and be cracks in the tangible side of things, to let the intangible light kind of shine through. And all the mitzvos are kind of like doorways for them to do that. And whenever you see someone, you're like, wow, that was really special what that person just did, is because you're detecting that intangible side of things kind of coming through. And we'll talk more about that as we go. Even if these people are kind of like just, they're broken down and they're just blocked off from all the despair of how, well, no one is interested in this. No one cares. People are so caught up and stuck in different things. And I talk to this person and that person, and no one even seems like they're interested in Torah. And like that's how people like this start to feel. So even if they start to they're faint already from all of the lack of self-confidence, because it's like living in a universe where everything is constantly going against the things that, because again, our biological bodies and our habituated dynamics are essentially the Achilles heel. They're kind of like the inertia way of being, where you kind of just go with the flow of things. So there are times where it's okay to go with the flow, but there are times where you have to go against the flow in order to really drive and strive towards truth, what's actually real. And there's so many different nuanced examples of that, where it's like, it is this way, but it's also kind of this way, and you have to sort of bring those two things together and properly use it. And we're going to talk about all kinds of examples at some point as we continue in our society today, and all kinds of cultural ideas about people and relationships and sexuality and education, and there's just and careers, and there's just so many different ways in which these things are. There's like a lot of partial truths that are very, very good, and they're out there, and some of them are viewed as bad, and some of them are falsehoods that are viewed as truth, and there's all kinds of mixings of these things. So, even if they're very tired out from that kind of war, Neged Hamon Rav, against the mass of other people who are just not on this page, that mass of people, the majority, or that it's so much more on a cultural level tending towards inertia. So people are kind of just going according to whatever their eyes are taking them. These people are not going to stop trying to give the satisfactory, the sweetness that is they're trying to share with the world. They're not going to stop being encouraged to continue. But the flag of the secrets of Torah will continue to be raised. Like real understanding and real, not to translate each of these terms exactly right now, but das v'emunah brura is like true understanding of reality in a way that is very deep and very accurate, very internal, like the inner space side of things, the intangible side of things. The Yeshua's will that will lead to freedom, emancipation of everyone, really, because it really just we're also caught in the different imbalances and habituated perceptions and habituated ways of thinking about our relationships and about ourselves. And this is about kind of freeing your mind from that and realizing you are not this. You are an endless, immortal beyond this that is kind of like experiencing this as an immortal self, kind of experiencing a finite existence and kind of returning to your immortal self in a constantly broadening understanding of who you really are. That's really what we're doing here. Like Vios Neshamos, for all the different individuals and the different slices of consciousness, the Olam Olam Kulam, for every layer of reality, for everyone, be Adam, and put it into their hands, that freedom. So let's just see just this ending paragraph. And if we're in the middle of trying to express these types of things, and suddenly we become mute. And if we are in the middle of trying to express these things, verbalize them, and the ideas suddenly drown in our silence, we can't get them out, they're sort of trapped inside. We don't have the strength to free our speech. When you feel this sometimes when you're trying to share something that's very profound, and like you just lose the mode, or you just see it's not coming out properly, and like you have to sort of free yourself from whatever blockages you have. Try to say it in a different way, and almost like recreate yourself to do it from a different angle. To sort of find the words. We should not, because of that, freak out and back away from that which we know is what we really want constantly. The fact that we have the heaviness of the mouth, that we can't always say things we want to say, will not stop the current of this transcendent desire. That through it, Hashem's self, all his things, will kind of be revealed into the tangible world as the intangible is manifest. That will give strength to those who are failing. Those who are struggling will give them a sense of harmony. Instead of me having to constantly fight against the currents, instead what I start to feel is that this is kind of like all one thing. It's one harmonious, each piece kind of going where it belongs. That's what this creates. And then he quotes a piece, just again, one of these types of phrases that he brings from Psukim and from Tefillah. Shalom, shalom, that Hashem will heal all those who are trying to share and express and say things from near and far. Hashem will heal all of them. So that's basically the idea here. Again, this is building on top of the previous piece also, that this is the call to sodiyut. So before it was everyone's looking for what's real, and now we're kind of saying, like, we're sort of describing it in the context of the Torah Sod of the Torah, which again is the teachings of the Torah that are intangible, impossible to actually verbalize, and yet we try to use analogies and try to find the ways to share them so we can actually share Torah in a way that, even if I can't say it out loud, but if I have an experience that I can use as an analogy, and you had a similar experience, you can now use that to sort of access an internal experience of what it is that I'm trying to say, and then you'll have an idea of what that is. So we use analogies of marriage and of love and of friendship and of eating, and there's so many different examples that we can use for that. And that's really what we're trying to capture with this type of way of thinking about it. That's really what this piece is trying to add. Hope that was relatively clear. I know there's a little bit of meandering there, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.